Hello, and welcome to a PokemonXD Gale of Darkness video, where today we're going to be completing the game with the duo of Gligar and Sneasle. Now these are two Pokemon that don't really seem too similar on the surface, but actually have a lot of similarities in that they are both Gen 2 Pokemon with no evolutions in that game, that then get an evolution in Gen 4 using the Razor items and being leveled up at nighttime. Which seems kind of needlessly convoluted, but it's a pretty cool way of doing it, I guess. So let's go ahead and move on to their stats. Gligar has 65 HP, 75 attack, 105 defense, 35 special attack, 65 special defense, and 85 speed. And Sneasle has 55 HP, 95 attack, 55 defense, 35 special attack, 75 special defense, and 115 speed. And they actually get a large variety of moves. Unfortunately, Sneasle can't actually make use of most of them because both Ice and Dark are special attacking types, and Gligar, even though it does get Earthquake, unfortunately it only gets Poison Sting as its attacking move until level 20 when it gets Quick Attack. So this could definitely be a huge problem for it. However, I do think that because Sneasle has decent moves at the beginning, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Anyway, with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. Our Sneasle in particular has a brave nature, raising its attack and lowering its speed, which is honestly fine. I'd rather it be hitting a little harder at the cost of a little bit of speed. It gets the Keen Eye ability, which prevents accuracy loss, which could definitely come in handy because a lot of Pokemon like to use Sand Attack. And according to Bulbapedia, it gets Quick Attack, Scratch, Leer, and Taunt by level 10. Anyway, moving on to Gligar, it has a naive nature, raising its speed but lowering its special defense, which once again is pretty decent. It is a little slower than Sneasle. It gets the Hypercutter ability, which prevents my attack from being lowered, which will definitely come in handy because a lot of Pokemon have Intimidate as well. And according to Bulbapedia, it has Poison Sting and Sand Attack by level 10. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. And at level 15, Sneasle learns Screech, which I'm going to teach over Leer, and I've decided to skip the old man today just because they actually didn't really struggle too much against him. So I went ahead and just moved on to the Green Power Ranger because I think I do the best against this Pokemon, and they're a lower level, so I know I can take them down pretty easily. Anyway, with that, let's commence just a little bit of rambling. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Anyway, thank you for answering the question of last episode whether or not you like the doubles videos or the singles videos more. I got a lot of people saying the doubles are really good, and that's really what they enjoy. However, I also see that singles are appreciated every once in a while, so what I think I'll do is every third or fourth video I do will probably be a singles video. That way there's a little bit of variety throughout the month. And I do want to say I do enjoy both styles of play. The double stuff is always really fun to come up with strategies that are really difficult to actually set up in singles, but singles have the extra challenge of being a single Pokemon defending against two attacks always coming at you at all times. So I can see the appeal of both, so I don't really want to leave one dead in the water and just continue on with the other. So thank you for your responses. Anyway, Green's defeated. We move on to the Tutor Lady to go pick up the move Mimic to take down the Duskull at the front entrance. And then at level 20, I learned Quick Attack over Harden, and I decided to catch the Carvana for the Black Glasses item to raise Dark-type damage by 10%. And at level 22, I get my first Dark-type move on Sneasle. I go into the boss fight against Lavrina. She leads with a Love Disc and a Beautifly. I go for Feint Attack into the Love Disc as well as Sand Attack. That way it can't hit me with Water Gun as often. Unfortunately, it still gets through. Beautifly hits Sneasle with a Gust, doing a little bit of damage. I double into the Love Disc, hoping to take it down, but it survives on a sliver, hits me with another Water Gun, taking me down to half. I go for Quick Attack and take down the Love Disc, and then out comes Roselia, which is going to be hit by Feint Attack, which doesn't really do too much damage, but because I really don't want it to set up Leech Seed, I double into it with Quick Attack. That way I know I outspeed and take it down. And then out comes her final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Delcatty. Now this thing I suspect is going to be really hard to take down. Double Quick Attack, and yeah, that's not very much damage at all. Shadow Rush doesn't take me down though. Go for Quick Attack and Feint Attack, which takes it down to about a fifth. Unfortunately, Gligar goes down. Thief doesn't do that much to Sneasle. Delcatty goes down. and I think unless I get a crit here, I'm not going to win, but even a crit wouldn't have been able to do it. So I go into the battle once again, go for quick attack, and I actually get a critical hit, taking it down to red health, and I finish it off with Gligar's quick attack. Out comes the Roselia once again, quick attack to take it down to half, and quick attack again, not quite enough to take it down though, so I get leech seeded unfortunately. Roselia heals up just a little. I go for quick attack to finish it off, and because quick attack has priority over feint attack, I will use this very often in order to finish off a weaker Pokemon and have Sneasle do a lot of damage to it whenever it switches in. Anyway, Delcatty takes a little bit of damage from it. Feint attack takes it down pretty low, hits me with a pretty weak Shadow Rush. Gust takes me down pretty low now, but I do think that I'll be able to take down the Delcatty before I go down, which will get rid of the Leech Seed. I survive on 1 HP, go for double quick attack, and Beautifly hangs on by just a little bit of health. So one last quick attack finishes off, and that's Lavrina. Not too bad. Moving on to the obligatory Mirror Bee. How are you doing today, Mirror Bee? Well, good to see you as always. Anyway, Gligar learns Feint Attack at level 28, which I'm going to teach over Poison Sting, and I run into another Sneasle. Goodbye, other Sneasle. And at the Realgam Tower, I pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect, and I'm going to teach Hidden Power right away. Sneasle's Hidden Power is Fire, which could have been useful, but once again, because of its really low special attack stat, it's not that great. But Gligar has Hidden Power Ghost, which is pretty decent because it is a physical move, and Gligar is in short supply of decent moves at the moment, whereas Sneasle is going to get another move right around the corner. Anyway, I decide to lose Sand Attack, and we move on to another Sneasle. Hello, other Sneasle. Goodbye, other Sneasle. And I decide to catch the swine up here for the Never Melt Ice item. That way I can raise Ice type attacks by 10%, which I'm going to learn Ice Beam right away. And we go into the battle against Snaddle. He leads with a Lantern and a Quagsire. I go for Ice Beam into the Quagsire immediately, which does about half. Hidden Power Ghost doesn't really do too much damage, but it does take it down a little ways. Unfortunately, I go down after just a couple Water Guns. I finish off the Quagsire though. Out comes Lunatone. Shockwave hits me, not doing too much damage. Go for Feint Attack, which doesn't even do half to the Lunatone. It sets up Shadow Sky. Another Shockwave. Fruity Pebbles rain down, doing damage to all. I go for another Feint Attack, which doesn't quite take down the Lunatone, and it takes me down with a crit Shadow Wave. Okay, well, after doing just a little bit of leveling, and after a few more attempts, I go back into the battle again. And I guess I forgot to record it, but Gligar learned Slash, which is definitely much more useful in this fight. Unfortunately, still not enough damage to take down the Quagsire in a single hit, so Quick Attack finishes it off, which is probably the best outcome because now Lunatone comes out into a Feint Attack doing half its health, so I know I'll be able to take it down next turn without it setting up Shadow Sky. So I go for Slash into the Lantern, doing a little bit of damage. Feint Attack finishes off the Lunatone, bringing out Cast Form. Another weak Shockwave from Lantern. I go for Ice Beam and Slash into the Cast Form to take it down immediately, because I don't really want it hitting me with Water Pulse or using Icy Wind to lower my speed. Then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Matang, which is definitely more threatening than Lantern at the moment. I go for Hidden Power, which does about a quarter. Ice Beam takes him below a half. Hits me with a Confusion. No Confusion though. Go for Hidden Power to take it down to red. Ice Beam finishes it off, and then all that's left is the Lantern, which definitely can't survive the both of us. Go for Feint Attack and Slash. And Slash takes it down to red, and Feint Attack finishes it off, beating Snaddle. So not too bad. Anyway, moving on to Gonzap, he leads with a Nuzleaf and an Electrode, and the Nuzleaf always goes for Fake Out on the first turn, but because we have the same priority, we can just use Quick Attack to take it down immediately, and bring in the Vileplume. Unfortunately, we do risk being hit by Spark because of it, but it can only hit Sneasle with it, so it's not that bad, and it actually gets frozen on the first turn, so that's nice. Anyway, Vileplume puts Sneasle to sleep, which is a little unfortunate. I go for Slash to start doing damage to the Whiscash because it'll start using Rock Tomb, which is super effective against Sneasle, or it'll start using Water Pulse, which is effective against Gligar. So I want to take it down as quick as possible. Slash takes it down to yellow, and Ice Beam takes down the Vileplume in a single hit. Out comes Skarmory, his final Pokemon. Hyper Beam takes down the Sneasle, unfortunately. Go for Slash, which doesn't quite take down the Whiscash, but luckily it just used Hyper Beam, so it has to recharge this turn. Finish it off with another Slash, and then Skarmory should just go down after a long while. Feint Attack? No, Feint Attack's not much better. Okay, let me speed this up just a hair. Yeah, because this fight actually takes quite a while, because we're just kind of chipping at each other, but eventually I do win. It just takes a little while. Come on, one more Slash, and that's the battle. With Gonzep defeated, I can get the Shadow Ball TM and teach it to Sneasle right away, and I can teach Earthquake to Gligar once I get to the top of the tower, and of course I need to teach Protect as well, otherwise I'll take down Sneasle. Anyway, I go into the battle against Gorgon. He leads with a Lairon and a Celio. I go for Shadow Ball into the Celio right away, which does over half, and Slash finishes it off, bringing out the Slowking. And Slowking should go down to a single Shadow Ball, I would hope. It does, so I'm able to slash the Ursaring coming out and do a little bit of damage. Iron Tail hits with a crit, doing a bit of damage to Gligar. I'm glad it didn't hit Sneasle with it. Go for Earthquake, taking down the Lairon and the Ursaring. And then out comes his two Shadow Pokemon, which is a Shadow Primeape and a Shadow Hypno, which I want to take down the Hypno first because it has Shadow Storm, which could do quite a bit of damage. So I go for Shadow Ball into it, and it goes down in a single hit actually. Go for Slash, doing half to Primeape. Shadow Rush hits, not doing very much damage at all. And Shadow Ball finishes it off. Pretty easy Gorgon. Anyway, now on to the last area of the game, and they're doing quite well for themselves. In fact, better than I thought they would. So as long as they can keep it together, they could have a pretty good score overall. Anyway, before we get on to the next boss fight, I run into another Sneasle, and then we move on to Leverina once again. She leads with a Gardevoir and a Gorbis this time. I go for Protect and Earthquake, which gets a crit on Gardevoir, taking it down. I'm not sure if that was necessary, but Gorbis survives on a little bit of HP. Hits me with an Ice Beam, taking me down in a single hit. I go for Ice Beam to take down the Roselia, and then out comes Farfetch'd, which is her first Shadow Pokemon. Water Pulse hits with a crit. Ice Beam takes down the Farfetch'd in a single hit. Out comes Altaria, which is her second Shadow Pokemon. And I go for another Ice Beam to take it down, and as long as the Gorbis doesn't get a crit, I should win here. Go for Shadow Ball, and with that, we scrape by. Okay, well, at level 50, I finally learned Slash, which I'm going to teach over Feint Attack. And at level 52, I learned Guillotine, which I'm going to teach over Quick Attack as well. Anyway, moving on to the battle against Snaddle. Once again, he leads with a Quagsire and a Matang this time. Go for Protect and Earthquake. And it takes down Matang in a single hit, and takes Quagsire pretty low. Out comes Scizor. Quagsire hits a Waterfall, doing quite a bit of damage to Gligar. I go for Shadow Ball and Guillotine, because honestly, if I don't think that Gligar can really do anything, you may as well just go for the 30% Guillotine. It doesn't really hurt, and in this case it actually pays off, and it takes down the Scizor in a single hit. Then out comes the Castform and Solrock. I go for Shadow Ball into the Solrock, which takes it down in a single hit, which brings out the Starmie, which hits really hard and could possibly even outspeed Gligar. So I go for Shadow Ball into it to take it down, and it does, and then all that's left is the Castform, which Slash takes it down nearly to half. Flamethrower hits, doing a little bit of damage. Go for Slash and Slash, and finish it off. Okay, well that was pretty easy. Move on to Ardos. He leads with a Shadow Swallow and an Alakazam. I go for Shadow Ball into the Alakazam immediately to take it down, because I don't want to deal with its elemental punches. And Swallow sets up Shadow Sky. I start doing damage to it with Slash, and Fruity Pebbles rain down. I go for Shadow Ball into the Kingdra and Slash into the Kingdra, hopefully trying to take it down in a single hit. But unfortunately it survives with just a little bit of health. Hydro Pump gets a crit and takes down Sneasle, though I don't think it needed it. And Kingdra's just about to go down. Swallow uses Shadow Half, which is quite unfortunate because now I'm going into Heracross with much less health. And because I think that this is going to be a failed attempt anyway, I start going for Guillotine, because if I can hit a couple at 30%, I could get a little bit of extra experience. Shadow Break hits me, taking me down to 25. Guillotine misses twice in a row, so I only have one more chance, but I doubt I'll even get the use, because Swallow finishes me off with Shadow Break, and that's the first attempt. So I decide to teach Gligar Protect over Feint Attack, and go back into it. Now, a thing about this game is that you can actually use the call command to raise your accuracy, which can be really nice for moves that don't have perfect accuracy, that miss every once in a while, if you want that extra guarantee that things are going to hit. And what you can do is you can raise the accuracy of Guillotine to make it a little better. Now, you don't really want to rely on the strategy, however, having a semi-reliable 50-50 one-shot move is really strong. It's just, it takes a couple turns to set up, and even then, it's still not that reliable. So, anyway, now that I have it set up, I can use it against the Snorlax at the end of the battle, if I can get there. Anyway, Shadow Ball nearly takes down the Heracross, Slash finishes it off, and then out comes Electabuzz, which is definitely a bit of a threat, especially if it outspeeds Gligar, because the best way to take it down is to use Earthquake, so I go for Protect, and then follow it up with Earthquake. Swellow actually attacks the Sneasle, so I'm able to get out scot-free, take down the Electabuzz, and then that brings out the Snorlax. Now this thing is always a bit of a pain, but I think with the power of Guillotine it shouldn't be that bad. Ice Beam finishes off Swellow, and Guillotine hits, taking down Snorlax. Okay, well that wasn't too bad. Moving on to Gorgon once again, he leads with a Slowking and an Ursaring. I go for Slash and Shadow Ball into the Slowking, which takes it down. And then out comes Aggron, who tanks a Slash with ease. Brick Break hits and does most of my health. Go for Protect, go for Earthquake, which takes down the Aggron in a single hit, and takes the Ursaring very low. And I decide not to learn Beat Up. Out comes Walrein, and I want to take down the Walrein as soon as possible, so I go for Shadow Ball and Earthquake, which I know is going to take down my Sneasle. However, I think it'll take down Walrein as well, which might be worth it, which it does, and then out comes his first Shadow Pokemon, which is Poliwrath. I go for another Earthquake, because now I'm free to do it as much as I like. Out comes Mr. Mime. Shadow Sky gets put up, but I don't think it's going to matter at this point. Go for another Earthquake, which takes down the Poliwrath, and takes down the Mr. Mime. Okay, well that was a pretty easy Gorgon. Moving on to Eldest. He leads with a Ninjask and a Manectric, which I want to take down the Manectric right away, so I go for Protect and Earthquake to take it down. And then out comes Salamence, which is always a bit of a threat, but I think with Ice Beam, even off of a really low special attack, I might still be safe to take it down in one turn, so I decide to have Gligar attack the Ninjask, which it does go down a single hit, then out comes Flygon. And I'm not exactly sure what I was doing here. I went for Protect on Sneasle for some reason this turn, when I really should have just taken down the Flygon. But now the Ninjask attacks, doing a little bit of damage to Gligar. I take down the Flygon in a single hit, and then out comes Marowak, which is another Shadow Pokemon. Slash finishes off the Ninjask, bringing out his Lapras, which is his final Shadow Pokemon. And so I go for Slash and Ice Beam to take down the Marowak, which it goes down to a single Ice Beam, and Slash really isn't doing that much damage to Lapras. So I decide to go for Shadow Ball and Slash, which still isn't doing that much damage, but eventually I will win. Shadow Storm does quite a bit of damage to both of us, but I think we're still safe. Go for another Shadow Ball and Slash, and goes down to red, and gets taken down. And that's Eldest, not too bad. Moving on to the big box legendary, Shadowlugia, which should go down to just a couple Shadow Balls. Slash takes it down to yellow, Shadow Blast does quite a lot of damage to Sneasle, and Shadow Ball finishes it off. Okay, well, moving on to the final boss, he leads with a Shadow Rhydon and Shadow Moltres. And I go for Protect on the Sneasle and Call on the Gligar. And that's because if I can actually set up Guillotine to be pretty accurate, I think there's a good chance I could actually get through this very quickly and very easily. So I decide to go all in on it. And I get taken down on the first attempt, so let's try that again after I lose here. And again, and again, and again, and again, until eventually I get to this attempt here, where I got just the luck I needed. Rhydon goes down to a single Ice Beam, and then out comes Exeggutor. Shadow Fire hits the Sneasle, doing not quite half health, which is very important for the strategy. Exeggutor goes down to a single Ice Beam, out comes Tauros, and then Moltres hits another Shadow Fire, which takes Sneasle down to 3 HP. So as long as the Moltres targets Sneasle again, this should start working. Tauros is very passive for the first few turns, so hopefully I can guillotine all of the legendary birds before it starts doing a lot of damage. And that starts with me protecting, that way it's going to have to stall another turn when it needs to set up Shadow Sky. The first bird goes down. Out comes Articuno, Shadow Hold hits. More Fruity Pebbles rain down. Go for Protect again. And then I go for another Guillotine into Articuno, which number 2 bird down. And then out comes Zapdos. And Shadow Rush doesn't really do too much damage to me. The Fruity Pebbles fade away, Guillotine hits the 3rd legendary bird, and then all that's left is the Tauros, which I don't even need to worry about because Earthquake finishes it off. Yeah. So how many attempts did that actually take? Well, it took 19 attempts. And most of those were just me hoping for the perfect luck. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it just didn't feel very satisfying. I don't know, it feels like I really betrayed the Pokemon because this was the original plan from the beginning, when I still had my preconceived notions on how they were going to do based on their stats and move pool and how I generally presumed how they were going to do throughout the game. And I had this idea from the very beginning that I was just going to use Guillotine to take down most of the big threats in this battle, and so that's where this whole thing started. But I really feel like they could have done it a lot easier and a lot simpler had I just gone at it the normal way. So I decided to backtrack and go back to how it was before I fought the Shadow Lugia. And wouldn't you know it, only after 3 attempts I was able to do it pretty normal. There was no reason for any of this convoluted guillotine stuff. Maybe I was just feeling inspired because of all the duo stuff I've been doing, with all the weather effects and all that. I wanted to try to keep that up with some really cool thing, but it really just ended up bumming me out by the end because it was just 19 attempts of me hoping for the perfect luck of everything, when I could have just done it easily from the beginning. Now, of course, I can't exactly use the second attempt at that as the actual official record, because that would be unfair to all the Pokemon on this list who only got 1 shot. So it does find itself down at the bottom of the B+ tier, sitting next to another duo of Blossom and Vileplume. And I think that these Pokemon together are actually pretty decent throughout the game. Now, of course, being in the B+ tier, they have their flaws here and there, but I do think that together they actually form a pretty decent team. It's just that Gligar kind of holds back Sneasle for most of the game until the very end when it gets Earthquake. And then Sneasle being around kind of holds back Gligar because it can't just freely use Earthquake. But also I don't think it's strong enough or bulky enough to really get away with it all the time. And that's where Sneasle really helps. Anyway, with that being said, they find themselves at the bottom of the B+ tier, which is still pretty good. And with that, if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and bye!